Bold solutions for the future. That's the mantra that Dr. Mahamudu Bawumias is running on as flag bearer of the governing party, wishing to lead the party to break the eight. Last week, he went to the UPSC and outlined a vision that he says is built on his boss's government's performance, but he would chart a new course of course. And he says things that were relevant 3 years ago may not be relevant now, and that's why he's running, and he wants to be given the mandate as a main driver to lead the country. My name is Umaru Sandamadu. You're welcome to Face to Face. On Face to Face today, my guest is a Minister for Information, also a key Dr. Bawumia campaigner. You're welcome. You're welcome to Face to Face. This is City TV. My name is Umaru Sandamadu. Honorable Kojo Oppong Nkrumah is MP for Ofasi Ayerbe and Minister for Information. How are you?
Well, how are you doing?
I'm well. How was your primary?
Pretty smooth.
Wasn't difficult? No.
There were three of us. We had about 574 delegates to speak to. I spent my time speaking to quite a good number that I believed were going to be supportive of my cause, and they came through for me.
That's very good, huh? Yeah. But 500 is very small. It should have been a larger number.
We are a relatively new constituency, as you would recall. We've only been in Parliament for 5 times now. Okay. That's a constituency. Okay. The first member of Parliament was there for 3 terms. I have done two, which is ending shortly. So our numbers are not as large because it was a smaller carved constituency from a previous one.
What did you get out of the 500 plus?
I got 370.
That's a handsome win.
Yes.
What do you think about this whole policy or program where we go for the primaries in a delegate form where only a few people would get to vote? The inducement, the vote buying, all of those things. What do you think?
No, I mean, I've heard different schools of thought that the delegate system is flawed and that very quickly we should grow to a general population system where every card-bearing member of the party has an opportunity to make that decision. One of the things I believe in is that when it comes to constitutions, you have to let things flow for a while, and then the things that don't self-correct, then you can make those interventions. Yeah. I think it's early days yet. Let's observe for a while, and then we can make those determinations.
What about protecting sitting MPs? Do you hold a view that protect them or let them go and prove that they are worth being protected?
The flag bearer of the party went through an election himself. We went through elections. I don't subscribe to that view. I believe that people who have served must have an opportunity to account for their service and let the people decide whether they want that person to continue or be changed.
So if things remain the same, you're going to return to the 9th Parliament because
Inshallah.
Your constituency looks very good in
Inshallah.
terms of being blue, right?
Inshallah.
Okay, wish you all the best and look forward to seeing you back. Now let's talk about your government. You've been Minister for Information for 7 years. Difficult job, easy job?
Actually, I think I've been Minister for 5.5 years. Mustafa Hamid was the initial Minister.
Oh, yeah,
I was
deputy
and then after about 1.5 years or so, I became Substantive Minister. I think it's one of the most difficult jobs in government for a number of reasons. Number one is that a lot of people don't understand what the job description really is. A lot of people think that you are the one who's supposed to speak for everybody in government, and that's not true. Okay. Your core job is to assist ministries, departments, and agencies design and execute their communication. So, for example, if the sports ministry is, opening up Boteman for the All Africa Games, your job is to assist the ministry to design and execute the communication associated with it. But sometimes people think, that you're supposed to be the spokesperson for everybody. And so there are many times when people are expecting an answer and they think that the information minister has it, and you may not necessarily have it. And then there are many times when, based on the brief that you have, you articulate that this is the brief I have from the Ministry of Health, that this is where we are on this matter. And then people will say, no, he's lying, it's not true, etc., etc. But people, or there are some people who don't understand that you work based on the briefs that you get, from the various ministries, departments, and agencies. And then there's one of the most important things that I think as a republic we have to confront, moving forward. Democracy thrives on the people knowing. And the people knowing requires communication to be properly funded. Communication is not propaganda. And it is important that communication across ministries, departments, and agencies is well funded. It is very poorly funded since about 1993. And all of those come together to make the job pretty difficult. But we've taken it every day in our stride.
So I think it's even evidence in the ministry. If you go to the information ministry, I mean, usually the top floor where the minister operates from is neat, but the general building itself doesn't even look nice.
Well, thankfully, we've been able to mobilize resources from other places to put up a refurbishment of our press center. Okay. It served us very well during COVID and
beautiful seats,
related matters. We've been able to set up a new media monitoring center, which allows us to keep an eye on everything that is going on across the country in the media space, and therefore be able to advise central government of it. We've been able to set up a brand new computerized research center that is able to then give government actual feedback, not I think, but actual feedback, empirical feedback of what people are thinking across the country. But we've also been able to put up a public relations coordination division, which allows us to then farm out public relations officers to ministries, departments, and agencies, and they are doing a classic job. I've been hearing, you guys at City, for example, speak to our PRO at Roads on a regular basis. Yeah. So though we've been poorly resourced, maybe because of my background, etc., we've been able to mobilize resources from the flanks to help move the agenda forward.
Is the Ministry of Information still relevant now?
Very, very relevant.
You sure? Because
very,
if there's
relevant.
a PRO for every ministry, there's a spokesperson for every politician or minister, they have their aides. You have this the State Information Department, was it?
Information Services Department.
ISD.
So the Ministry of Information does 5 things. Number 1 is to assist ministries, departments, and agencies to design and execute their communication program. Number 2 is to get feedback to central government. And that's why I'm saying we set up, a proper research entity. It's a whole unit. With 261 research officers in the district, a fully computerized headquarters that is able to get the data, working with Ghana Statistical Service and make it available. Number 3 is also to develop policies and programs to support the media ecosystem. And that's where all our media support programs, like the Media Capacity Enhancement Program, the Coordinated Mechanism for the Safety of Journalists, crowding in international partners to assist the Ghanaian media like FPIM, all sit. We've also been representing the state-owned media in Parliament. Though they are independent, we represent them in Parliament. And then you'll find that we are retooling and reorganizing the information services department.
The reason I'm asking if you
particularly for the purposes of policy for the general mass media communication ecosystem, it is a very relevant
But what if
entity to
it
have.
is subsumed under the Ministry of Communication, which happened in the past? I think it happened under the Mahama government. And there's a promise, I think, by either him, again, that if he comes back, he's going to merge it. Do you not think that if you can merge information under communication, then information is seemingly becoming irrelevant?
I mean, there was a time when education was merged with youth and sports under President Kufuor's administration. When it comes to the architecture of government, the Constitution deliberately does not tie the hands of a president. And so that's a different argument altogether. I mean, any president can choose to mix or merge with any other sets of ministries. But the question is, do we need a ministry, whether it's on its own or merged with another, that is responsible for these things that I've spoken about? We absolutely do.
You are the Minister for Information. Does it also include protection for journalists?
Well, not exactly. The job of protecting journalists cuts across various entities. Yes, those who make policy, like myself, are partly responsible. The National Media Commission, which as an independent constitutional body, has some responsibility. The Ghana Police Service has some responsibility. The Judicial Service has some responsibility. So there's a cross-cutting responsibility. What we have done is to be at the forefront, designing a program for it, and seeking to hold all the other parties accountable for how they execute their part of the program.
So promoting journalism is important. The index, we are not looking that good. I mean, the attacks on journalists fall on the average every year, is it? That's what the GG was just telling us. What do you make of that? Because it's problematic that we are seeing attacks on journalists. You have been a journalist before.
Yes, I am still a journalist.
I'm not sure you are still
well,
a journalist.
I am. I still write, actually.
Yeah, but that's for novels. You write
novels? No. I still write journalism pieces. I'll share a few with you. No, okay. But, I mean, to the substance, yes, the phenomenon of attacks on journalists, has taken an untidy turn. But we haven't rested on our oars. We've been at full length trying to combat it. For example, you notice that as the ministry, itself. We are loud and about whenever there's an incident of this nature. We go secondly to report to the Ghana Police Service. We then follow up to ensure that investigations and prosecutions are taking place. In fact, last year, we held our first annual accountability forum with the Judicial Service, the Chief Justice Center rep to represent her, the IGP Center rep. All the data was made available of how many incidents had happened, how many had been reported, how many had been concluded, how many were still work in progress. And it is something we have to keep doing and holding all of these institutions accountable. If somebody is attacked and we don't make a report, we say it on radio or online, but we don't actually make a report to the police and we don't provide the evidence to back it, it will be difficult for the police to actually investigate and prosecute. If the police investigate and end up preferring weak charges, like, unlawful entry or something like this, where they could have preferred some more, sterner charges, which will yield tougher sanctions, then they are failing us. If the Judicial Service, the judiciary, specifically, is not being tough in terms of the sanctions that they apply, then they are failing us. And I think for each of these, we have been clear and firm, way up to the judiciary, asking that the right thing to be done. I was in Parliament a few weeks ago calling on Parliament to join in the effort to hold each of these entities accountable. And already I see some, response to that. We have to do a lot more about it so that we get the results we are looking for.
The day you were being elected in your village in the eastern region, there was election happening in Yendi. Our correspondent who went there reports to us that the member of parliament, your colleague, assaulted him and also charged his boys to also unleash thuggery on him. We have since reported that case to the police. Based on that and other cases, the Ghana Journalists Association says, let's blacklist people who attack journalists. The NMC chairman has come up with a contrary view, saying it is not, it's dysfunctional. As a journalist and also minister who is in government, I'm just wondering, what's your position on this?
100% I support the use of a blacklist as a legitimate tool to bring attention to the cause of journalists and the fact that some persons may have been proven to have attacked a journalist. I mean, if I, as a public officer or as a politician, reserve the right to say that I will not speak to City FM or City TV because of X, Y, Z, why is City stopped from saying that they will also blacklist me for something that they consider I have done? So, as a matter of principle, I support the use of a blacklist as a tool to draw attention. I don't think it will be 100% effective, though, because media ownership is diverse, editorial interests are different, and so despite an announced blacklist, you will still find some media houses covering these persons. But what it does is that it draws attention to the phenomenon. It's like a protest. The protest in itself doesn't resolve the matter, but it draws attention, and for that I support it. I, however, think that it is also very important for the GJA to lay down a clear criteria for when this blacklist is used. It ought not to be used because it is alleged that Kojo has done so. It ought to be used when a certain threshold has been met. So, for example, I heard in the case of Howard Kumsin that the GJA president said persons believed to be associated with her. So, is she involved or is she not involved? If you have a clear criteria, because even for discretionary power in the Constitution, you are required to have clear laid down procedure so that it's not at the whims and caprices of, the use of that instrument. So I support it. I think clear laid down procedure and thresholds are required.
Okay.
And it will help in this fight.
How has your government fared? I'll ask you first if you were an outsider, then I'll ask you if you were an insider. If you were hosting the Super Morning Show and they asked you to place a verdict on Akufo-Addo 7 years on, what would you say?
I'll say look at the data.
And what's the data saying?
Good. And let me just elaborate on that one. You find sometimes there's a lot of commentary, but the data is missing. If you look at the data, if you want to look at, let's say, the economy, every economy everywhere in the world is judged based on some parameters. You look at stability, you look at growth, you look at reserves, you look at jobs, you look at currency depreciation or currency stability. And I would say, look at the data, the accepted benchmarks of data measuring on all of these parameters. And I think that...
And judge it against what? Judge it against yourself or other countries or your previous people?
And judge it against multiple parameters. 1, against what you promised. 2, against other competitors on the political landscape in Ghana. 3, against other countries in the sub-Saharan region and on the global landscape.
Okay.
And I think that if you do all of these, in all humility, you will come to 2 conclusions. 1, we're not in a perfect place, but 2, we have made significant progress from where we started off from in January 2017, and we've also made significant progress on the promises and the commitments that we made. And again, we've made significant progress as compared to our peers.
How are you coming to 2 conclusions? Mathematically, that doesn't make sense to me.
No, I'm saying there are 2 parts to this conclusion.
Yes.
Number 1.
So 2 parts to the conclusion.
Yes,
not that there are 2
No. 2 parts to the conclusion. Perhaps I should rephrase. 2 parts to the conclusion. That is not perfect yet. Yes, there are a lot of people who are going through a lot of difficulty today. I mean, if inflation drops down from 50-something% to, 20-something percent, what it means is that year to date, the prices of goods and services in the inflationary basket are going up by 20%. That is still difficult for a lot of people. But if you look at the trend and where we have come from, then you can then make the point that we are making progress. So yes, we are not in a perfect place, but we are making progress. And it's important that we consolidate and grow on this path.
If you promise to give us perfection, and at the end the conclusion is that what you've given us is not perfect, that's failure.
I didn't see perfection in the MPP manifesto.
Oh, you give us perfection. You said that by the time... there are so many things we can use to describe perfect. For instance...
Let's not do this. No. Let's pick specific examples.
The overall agenda of the manifesto.
Yeah, so perfection...
An agenda for
perfection, jobs. Perfection was not in the manifesto.
You're going to perfect Ghana,
when you say jobs.
Hold on, no. Let's settle this issue of perfection.
Okay.
What you promised us is a perfect Ghana.
No, I don't think so.
And I'm not using perfect because you wrote the word perfect on the manifesto.
In all humility.
But if you said to us, Honorable, if you said to us that you are going to make Accra the cleanest city in Africa, that is perfect. If you say to us that we're going to move from taxation to production, that is perfect. If you say to us that you're going to deliver free senior high school, that no one will be left behind, that is perfect.
So let's deal with these first 3 things you mentioned. Take Accra, the cleanest city in Africa. It's not a target that has been achieved. Take free senior high school. It is a target that has been achieved.
With challenges.
Take, of course, with challenges. Take taxation to productivity and look at the data. So right from the onset of our government and the taxes that we met, what did we do? About 20 different tax handles were either removed totally or reduced.
Nuisance taxes, you call
What did that translate into? Increased productivity. Look at growth that was sitting around 3.6% as at the end of 2016. And what happened when we took away those nuisance taxes? And in addition, introduced non-fiscal policy measures that were aimed at liberating the energies of the various aspects of our economy. You saw growth begin to shoot up in agric and in industry and in services to the average of over 5% between 2017 and 2019. So you would agree with me that that was also achieved. However, after 2020, when our fiscals literally collapsed, there was a need to reintroduce some taxes to try and clean up some of the, may I say, fiscal gaps that had come up. And today you are hearing our flag bearer make the point that he expects that by the time, God willing, he assumes office in January 2025, he will not have need for some of those taxes. So perfection, I'm not sure, is what was promised. There were specific promises that were made. A good number of them have been achieved. Some of them have not been achieved. But life is a continuum, and we'll build on those.
If you took away nuisance taxes with your left hand and imposed e-levy and emission tax and other taxes with the right hand,
so look at it over a time frame. Nuisance taxes were taken off in 2017.
Yes.
And in consonance with the promise of moving from taxation to productivity, you would notice that productivity picked up. 2017, 2018, 2019. In 2020, when we shut down the golden triangle of Ghana's economy, growth that was averaging 5% plus. Remember when we came to power, growth was about 3.6% thereabout. Between 2017, 2018, 2019, when we moved from taxation and focused more on productivity, growth went up average 5% plus. In 2020, when we shut down the golden triangle, government revenues were not coming. So you had to do about 2 things on the upside. you had to borrow unprecedented amounts of money to keep the Ghanaian economy functioning. You also, as part of that borrowing, and that's a second, had to ask the central bank to finance government. You put those things together, and that's how you got the resources to keep the Ghanaian economy or to keep the body politic functioning. Remember, we were living in a period where teachers, for example, were not going to school and teaching, but were being paid. A lot of public services were either running shifts or were not, working at all, but had to be paid. I know private organizations, I don't know if City had the same thing, private organizations that literally had to furlough workers or had to tell workers that we can't continue with this. But the government had to keep all of this running. By the time we finished, our debt had reached an unsustainable level, and we needed to quickly find ways of recouping. So something like a COVID levy was introduced to help us plow back resources to clean the fiscal gap that had been occasioned because of the interventions. Something like the electronic transactions levy was introduced. We had difficulties in getting the Ghanaian public to agree with us that these revenues were important to help us clean the books. And that's where you heard, for example, the Minister of Finance make the point that, he believes very much that we can be successful with it. We don't have to go to the International Monetary Fund. Eventually, that didn't, pan out. And so the president who had been elected, the president with whom the buck stops, took the decision that it was important to go to the International Monetary Fund so that we could get those resources we were not necessarily getting locally, at the amounts that we were looking for, to begin to clean up the books. And we are optimistic that by the time we are done, at least with 2024, a significant cleanup would have been, occasioned. And that's why the new leader of the party says that if he has the opportunity by January 2025, he would not need to be holding on to those revenues.
So in 2017, you introduced a Asempa budget. You take away the so-called nuisance taxes. You are going to be heavy on productivity of production. Then we go the full circle, and by 2024, we are having more nuisance taxes. So full circle, looking at the bigger and broader picture.
Do not take away the occasion of 2020, which, for example, the IMF managing director has described as the biggest economic shock since the last depression. Mm-hmm. You can't wish that away. It was such a significant event that I think in the UK, they had about 3 prime ministers or so in the space of, was it a month or 2 months? That's how significant what happened in 2020 was. I think in Italy or so, they also had a number of leaders changed because it was clear that the kind of shocks that were coming and the kind of leadership that was required to hold those shocks were not a par. So anybody who seeks to do an analysis of the Akufo-Addo administration from 2017 to now and seeks to wish away, with the greatest of respect, the significant development of these global economic shocks occasioned by COVID, I don't think is being fair to the facts. And that is why we always say, look at the period 2017 to 2019. And then look at the period 2021 to now. You will see, if you pick the two, you will see numbers and evidence that, speaks for themselves.
So you're saying,
if you put it all together, then you also account for the impact of the 2020.
But why are we recovering? Year? Why are we recovering from 2020 in 2024 using a tax on emission, a tax on electricity consumption? Why didn't we? Because we imposed COVID levy immediately. COVID came, and we said that this is what we are going to use it for.
No, we didn't. It was in. It was the year after.
Okay.
When
so
the debts and the
I'm still looking at the immediacy.
Yes, but that's the point I'm making.
But 2024. So 3 years after 2020.
I'm coming. So the year after, that is when we introduced that revenue handle to help us clean up the fiscal gaps that have been occasioned in the year. Now, you also realize that success in terms of implementing some of those revenue handles eluded us. Look at e-levy. The projections that were made for e-levy didn't come through.
So is this supposed to make up for e-levy?
No, I'm coming. So once those projections didn't come through, you had to resort to other measures like the fund to help plug those. Now, when you go into a program with the fund, they're going to bail you out, and then they're going to require you to mobilize those revenues that you didn't, mobilize to start cleaning up your books. This VAT on electricity is something that I think had been passed, if my numbers are correct, as far back as I think 2013, 2014, but had never been implemented. And the view of the Ministry of Finance was to go ahead with its implementation.
Now,
It proved very unpopular. Cabinet didn't, agree with that view, and the ministry has walked that back. I take particular notice of the statement of the ministry that says that though they are walking it back, they will still need to engage with stakeholders to see how to close that same fiscal gap. So it tells you that the purpose of that was to close that fiscal gap. There's talk,
was
it an
IMF advice that we should do that?
Well,
or we decided
that you come to the table with your measures.
Okay, this is one of them.
That if I'm going to achieve, let's say, a primary balance of X, these are the measures that I think I need
this is one of them.
Yes. So this is the measure that the Finance Ministry came to the table with, and it has not, been found to be successful, and they've had to walk it back.
This is Face to Face on City TV. My name is Umaru Sandamadu. My guest, Minister for Information, Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. We're having a conversation on the Akufo-Addo government as we build up into the Dr. Bawumia government that he's hoping materializes from January 7, 2025. And that's if the MPP succeeds in breaking the 8. When we come back, we'll try and deal with a few more issues in Akufo-Addo's government and then talk about his mate, the new flag bearer of the MPP. You're welcome back. This Face to Face on City TV. My guest is the Minister for Information, Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. So your party seeks to break the 8. You have a new driver in the seat, which driver says he was just a mate. Now, people are saying that it's dishonesty if he tries to separate himself from his driver. They've used so many scenarios about trotro drivers and how their mates do all the shenanigans. I'm sure you've seen that. Help us explain the difference, if there is any. Or you are saying that the difference people are creating is mischief?
So if people say it is insincere for him to describe himself as the one who was not the driver, then those people are saying that President Mahama is insincere as well. Because President Mahama described himself as a spare driver after the passing of President Mills. Why? Because he was making the point, that constitutional point, that under Article 58 of the Constitution, executive power rests in the bosom of the president. We all serve at the pleasure of the president.
Except the vice president.
The vice president serves at the pleasure of the president. The vice president is selected. Mm-hmm. The presidential candidate is the sole person whose image and name is on the ballot paper. He is elected. And he is the one who then assigns responsibilities in the government.
But I don't like it when you
choose. If I may answer your question,
mm-hmm.
He can choose to assign specific responsibilities to ministers, to the vice president, or to anybody. And we all work in pursuance of his or her vision. In fact, at the event at the UPSA, I tried to remind the audience of the various vision statements that had been made by various leaders of our party in times past, from J.A. Kufuor's golden age of business to Nana Addo's free SHS to Albert Eduboahen's return to democratic rule with strong institutions to Victor Usu and all of those. And the point is this: whenever somebody becomes the leader of the party, on the platform of the leaders, of the party's philosophy, he will couch a vision that is relevant to the times in which he is. and he will lead us to the election based on that vision. The fact that a new leader articulates a vision that in part may deviate from the vision statement of the outgoing leader does not mean anything wrong has happened. When President Mills was buried, the very next set of months, I was a journalist at Joy FM at the time. We were invited to the Accra International Conference Center for President Mahama to outline his vision statement. He had been vice president. Why did he have to come outline his vision statement? Why did he have to say that he was a spare driver and that now he was in the driving seat and therefore wanted to construct things according to his vision? Because that is a reality. So I think that argument, with the greatest of respect, is superfluous. What I think we should do is to focus on the vision.
Yes.
And ask ourselves whether this vision
but just a point
answers the questions ahead of us.
Because you said that you all serve at the pleasure of the president.
Yes.
I'm just not sure if the vice president serves at the pleasure of the...
He does. Because
no, hold on. Before election, yes,
yes,
because the president can choose a running mate.
Yes.
But once you are elected and sworn in,
yes,
I'm not sure presidents can fire their vice president midstream.
He can
fire you.
What is the role of the vice president according to the Constitution? Yes. So if the president, for example, doesn't want you to even chair a cabinet meeting in his stead, cabinet will not be scheduled in his absence.
Okay.
Cabinet will be scheduled when the president is available. Today, our vice president is chairman of the economic management team. And we have said this unchallenged. The economic management team, even forget about the constitutionality, it's a subcommittee to cabinet. If you read, I think, article, if I'm correct, 56, cabinet is only an advisory body to the president. That's why when we come to parliament, we say that this instrument came by executive approval or came with cabinet approval. So cabinet, profers advice to the president. Advice is not something that you are bound by. And the fact that you listen to advice from various people and say, I hear all of you, but this is the path I want to take, does not mean you have done something wrong. In fact, if you listen to the vice president, he said that he's very proud of all the advice that the AMT has preferred to the administration of President Akufo-Addo. And now what he's saying is that if you make me president in January 2025, by the grace of God, I am going to pursue this particular vision. Some parts of that vision are in consonance with the Akufo-Addo administration's work and will be a continuation. And some parts will be different for about 2 or 3 reasons. Number one, the circumstances of January 2025 will be different from the circumstances of January 2017 or January 2021. And you would understand, therefore, that some of the things will be different. Number two, the vice president, having sat where he has sat for the last 7 years, has learned a lot. Not everything has gone right in the Akufo-Addo administration, and we are not shy to admit it. Not everything has gone right.
You haven't admitted that. That's always been a difficulty. No,
we have said, I have even right here said it, and we have said it over and over again. The vice president at Kaswa in 2022 spoke about it. Here's what we're saying. He has had the opportunity to learn a lot of things, to see a lot of things firsthand. And with his particular expertise and his particular disposition to observe and to learn, the things that need to be improved upon, he will improve it. So, for example, he says that you can trust that he will protect and improve free senior high school, the free senior high school program. Why? Because, why do you need to improve it? Because you've had the opportunity to sit and observe, see the gaps in it, see the challenges in it, see the mistakes in it, and you can build upon that. Other candidates, you may not have the confidence that they will even protect it, let alone improve it. So today you will find that he makes a point that circumstances will be different, and so some parts of his vision will be different. Having learned, he will be able to be in a position to improve some of those things. And then obviously, he also has a particular direction that he wants to take Ghana. A cash-light economy, a tent for the many and not the few.
Why didn't he list out to us things he disagreed with? Because, believe it or not, he's going to be a man of his own now. He was serving under somebody, but now the party has given him a mandate. He should say that holding the elephant's flag now, these are the things I thought were a mess or going to create a mess for our government. And these are the things that will let us crash. I am not going to stand for them. I did not stand for them at the time, and I'm going to oppose them now. So why didn't he list out those things so we know?
So I'll give you 2 parts to my answer. Number one, at times when he he found it necessary. He openly spoke about his personal position on some matters. Take e-levy, for example. He said it openly, that I don't believe in taxing e-levy. I don't believe in taxing e-levy for two reasons. You affect growth in the digital payment space, and you will tax the poor. When it mattered at the table, he expressed it. But you don't expect the vice president to come and hold a press conference outside that government has passed e-levy, and this is what I said at a cabinet meeting. He's under the oath of secrecy. Even I, as information minister, wouldn't do that. He's under oath of secrecy. He will contribute to the discussions, and in the end, the Akufo-Addo administration will take a decision where it wants to go. Secondly, it will be very immature for any political leader when especially you can tell clearly that you have an opportunity to assume the reins of power and do things in a particular way, to say that the route you want to take is to come and do a press conference that I disagree with this. It's not smart, it's not mature. Rather, focus on the prize, keep your eye on the ball, assume the reins of power, and use that power to correct the things that you believe must be corrected.
A lot of people who have criticized this position say that you are in the kitchen, it is hot, and you still remain in there. In fact, I listened to an analogy this morning on one of the radio stations where they say you're traveling to Japan with your boss, who is a driver, and you see that whatever is happening in the car is not good. You keep silent until you get to Atimpoku, then you say to the drivers, listen, the driver is getting down. I'm going to take you back to Accra. Then we start the journey all over again.
He didn't.
That's how people. That's how people are seeing it.
False analogy. That's
how people are seeing it. That
he
could have jumped him.
No, he couldn't have. What he needed to do was to make his thoughts known, and then assume the reins of power and use it to correct the outstanding things that he believes need to be improved upon. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's what every smart vice president does. That's what every smart appointee in an administration does. But
e-levy is the only thing that's...
The thing for me is this. What is he saying about jobs?
I know. You're trying to reshape the conversation.
I'm not.
Let's fix this before you go to...
I'm saying. The man has put out about 70 policy items grouped into 20 thematic areas.
Yes.
I'm saying we can have a long debate about why didn't he do this, why didn't he
do that.
We can also have some time to look at how his vision responds to specific things.
No problem.
And ask ourselves whether these specific things answer the questions of the millions of our brothers and sisters who are out there, who are looking for answers to questions on their minds.
Thank you for trying to remoderate the conversation.
No,
we'll get there.
Not.
This is the point, though. E-levy is the only thing he has publicly spoken against.
Because he was asked a question in the radio studio about it.
Does it mean that he agrees with everything else that Akufo-Addo has done?
You don't agree with everything that's happened at City, but you work at City.
Okay.
And it will not be smart of you to be holding press conferences on a daily basis, telling us what you disagree on with Bernard Shaw and with Sam Mensah's leadership style and everything. Tomorrow, if you are made chief executive of City, I can bet my bottom dollar, knowing Sanda, you will do some things differently. And there's nothing wrong with it. Let's focus on what you want to do differently. Does it work? Does it help? And let's help you to do it.
You have been quoted as saying that he was part of the works for e-levy.
No, I've not been quoted as saying that.
I have seen publications.
No, you haven't seen publications.
I have
what
seen
you
so
have
many
seen
publications.
is a headline.
Okay.
That's
claims,
a publication.
No,
but those are not the words you spoke. I'm very particular about words. A headline that claims that I said that the vice president was instrumental in drafting e-levy. I have never used those words. Somebody decided to write those words and claim I have. The words I spoke were that the vice president was instrumental in cabinet and EMT meetings in expressing his principled position on the matter. What is his principled position on the matter? That he doesn't support it, and that if you do it, you're going to affect growth, and then you are going to tax the poor. Now, if I say that the vice president was instrumental in cabinet and EMT meetings in expressing his principled position on the matter, I think that it's either mischievous, or I don't want to use another word, for anybody to then try to reinterpret that to mean that I said the vice president drafted.
So you did speak at the
time. Journalism is one of the most important functions in the state. And I encourage all my colleagues that let's quote the words people use. Let's not try to rewrite their words just to achieve a headline.
So you said what you said at the time, but it was misquoted. That's what it was mispublished, or it was published wrongly.
And actually, if you go into the story, you'll find that they quoted me. But then on the headline, they put a different headline there that I said he was instrumental in drafting e-levy.
So this was a cabinet thing, and you came out to breach your oath of secrecy and make the announcement that...
No, in fact, well, if you read the oath of secrecy, it says that I will hold these things secret unless they are necessary for the discharge of my work.
So you decided at the time...
I didn't decide.
Because there's a popular request for the whole government to support e-levy.
It was necessary for my work to provide information for the edification of the Ghanaian public.
Even if that information meant you're breaching what has been said.
It's not a breach of the oath of secrecy. The oath of secrecy says that you hold it secret unless it is important to divulge it in pursuance of your work. And this was an instance in which
a number of you, members of parliament and ministers, were fighting to make sure e-levy goes through in this chamber, not far from where we are sitting. You are the same people now who are supporting Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, who never supported e-levy like you're saying to us now. How do you, or what is your consistency now, you ministers and MPs who supported e-levy and even did a beautiful cake and cut it, versus those who are now...
Again, that is falsehood. There was a party in which a guest did an e-levy cake and presented it to, I think, 2 members of parliament who were there. A photo was taken, it was sent viral, and now you've seen people try to claim that the government held an e-levy party and cut a cake. That's false. Secondly, I've now seen photos of the wife of the vice president at a program where then people do a Photoshop of her photo and then put the e-levy cake there to try to create the impression that that's falsehood. But the substantive question, let me answer
about what you did in parliament versus what he said.
In both instances, the leaders explained the basis on which they needed to do what they are doing. For example, if you look at the Akufo-Addo administration's presentation of its fiscal program, I think for the year 2021, if I'm correct, 2021 or 2022, it rolled out clearly an expansionary fiscal program and needed to fund it, and made the point that in funding that expansionary fiscal program and helping to clean up the fiscal gaps that have been occasioned because of the spending and the debt of COVID, it needed the electronic transactions levy, and explained why it thought that was the way to go. Dr. Bawumia, the new leader of the MPP, says that in 2025, I'll be rolling out a different fiscal program. I'm going to start by cutting expenses. I'm cutting down the size of government to not more than 50 ministers. Immediately, that's about 45 V8s and auxiliary staff that are gone. That's a savings on the public purse. He says, I'm going to ensure that a lot of the capital expenditure that central government carries on, I'm going to waive it away. And so I'm going to rather work with the private sector to do a lot of the capital expenditure, roads, etc.
Then all of a sudden, people had a change of mind.
I'm coming. Once he says that, you begin to see expenses moving off the expenditure table. He says, number 3, the goods and services budget that has a part for, purchasing things like printers, etc., etc. I'm going to do what a lot of the private sector organizations do, which is leasing of these assets. And the responsibility of, servicing and retooling is now on the lessor. The moment he outlines that, and the manifesto will show you the numbers, you see the cut in expenditure. And he's saying that because of this cut, if I am designing the fiscal program of 2025 as the president in whose name and on whose behalf the budget and the fiscal program is put together, I will not need these expenses, therefore I don't need these revenues. That's perfectly understandable. And so when you find members of parliament say, I subscribe to this fiscal program for 2025, somebody may choose to mock it by saying, the same people who were happy with e-levy, now they are happy that it's gone. But I think that we should edify the conversation by explaining the context within which the two issues have been raised. Let me see if what you
said is understandable, whether I can summarize it. You're saying that when e-levy was brought, the boss of the government at the time, what he said to you made sense. Now the new boss of your party makes another statement which makes sense to you, so makes you depart from the earlier position. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying to you that when City FM was set up at first and there was a conversation about City TV, the conversation was that, no, we don't need to go on a TV path. When times changed and Samens decided that I need to go on a TV path and made an argument that this is why I need to bring on TV and do the convergence, all of you are supporting it.
What are you saying?
The two are the same.
No, they're not the same.
They are the same. I'm saying that
when someone said we should do radio,
I'm saying I'm not saying when someone said you should do radio. I said when the leadership said that let's do TV at the time, there was an objection to it.
Yeah, no.
Oh, there was.
Please. The staff did
I am an insider like yourself. I am an insider like yourself.
Listen, stop bringing
if you want us to go back if you want us to go there, but the point I'm making is this. When Ken Oforiatta putting together the fiscal program of 2021 said, I'm doing these expenses, I'm cleaning up these debts from COVID, and therefore I need these revenues. He made sense, and Parliament supported him. When Bawumia signals that in 2025, I don't need these expenses, so I don't need these revenues, it makes sense. You can ridicule it as much as you want, But it makes sense.
But do you not think with hindsight it was a waste of time going to bring the E-levy, considering that it hasn't rigged in as much as you were one
The
hoping
lessons
for?
have been learned,
Two,
and that's why the lessons have been learned.
it has become an unpopular tax on you.
But that is why the lessons have been learned, and the new leader of the party has given the policy.
So those of you in Parliament, would you not come and apologize?
We are happy to support him on this new path.
But you won't apologize for the...
I think I've been clear. The lessons have been learned, and we're happy to support him.
Moving up forward, he says 1/10 for all. I'm sure he wanted to say one umbrella for all, but that would sound different. He said 1/10 for all. What does that mean by 1/10 for all?
Okay, so you know, first of all, we make the point that not all persons are economically inclusive or included in productive activity in the Ghanaian economy. So many people looking for jobs who can find jobs, so many people who are looking for the arm of government to be stretched to the communities in which they are living to get some basic services which they are not getting. It is important for the state to stretch or be stretched, a tent big enough for all to participate under, for all to find space to operate economically. People can't get jobs because of poverty at home and couldn't get access to a particular education or space in a particular institution. If the school can take only 1,000 people, you may be qualified, but you are not getting admission in there. What he's saying is that he's introducing a set of bold solutions that will stretch the tent of the state to accommodate as many of our people to be involved in productive activity as possible.
In executing that, you need revenue, and widening the tax net is something I've heard since I started listening to budgets.
Yes.
He's saying the same thing. He's going to widen the tax net.
Yes.
How is he going to widen the tax net?
You know, that, for example, is a classic example. He says that when it comes to income tax, this stratification is leading to a high level of tax evasion by people. And what he wants to do is to bring a simplified tax model that has a certain specific percentage for incomes. And even if you look at VAT, now there's a view that people should actually move to a sales tax model. I didn't say sales tax, but a sales tax model for VAT, so that you don't do this input and output thing. You have a flat rate that works. He's talking about changing the tax framework of this country to a manner that makes it simple and easy for more people to participate. He's also talking about what he has led to do, which, and I'm not shy to say it, is not being fully implemented. For example, Dr. Bawumia is the one who said that if you still sit at GRA and issue tax identification numbers, which are less than national ID numbers, you are duplicating. Merge the two databases. Automatically, you get the tax database growing exponentially, and you have potentially a larger number of potential taxpayers. What is now left with is that the Ghana Revenue Authority has to use the new database fully and go after everybody who is in that widened net. I can say to you today that that is not being fully done. So he says that if you give me the opportunity, these are the things I'm going to make as priorities and ensure that they are done.
Talk to me about his private sector campaign. It appears that he says roads should be built by private sector. I don't understand that. Explain to me.
Okay, so you can use private sector partnership to give roads on concessions to be built and tolled by the private sector. When you travel to the US, when you go to the US, you know there are easy pass roads, etc., where the private sector is given incentives, insurance funds, etc., are given incentives to come in and to construct some of these roads and to toll them. And his point is that he's going to bring in the private sector to do a lot more of what government is struggling to do in a manner that gives the private sector incentives so that they use their capital to do it. The people benefit. Government doesn't constrain itself with resources that it doesn't have. It's been tried in other places. It's worked, and he wants to mainstream that here in Ghana.
So another youth and the road tools should be back.
You can describe it how you want.
No, I'm not describing it how I want. No, tell me. Is that not what it is?
The vision that he puts out there is a bold, sensible vision, and it must be supported instead of.
If a private sector person builds a road, government is not going to pay. The person has to recoup the money on the road.
Yes.
He has to impose a toll.
Yes.
So it's simple. There's going to be road tolls coming back.
I have said over and over again that you can describe it how you want. I've explained the vision.
This is face-to-face on CityTV. My guest, Honorable Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. In fact, when we come back, my next question is, if Dr. Bawumia wins and reduces the size of government to 15 ministers, would he get to be inside some? How is he going to deal with that? And a few other things that he has talked about. When we come back, please stay. You're welcome back. My guest, Minister for Information, Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. Another promise Dr. Bawumia made, job creation the private sector way. This is a government that came in and brought us NAPCO, where you said you're going to employ people, and after 3 years you gave up on that whole thing and ran away. You're realizing now that you have to give it to private.
As my colleague journalist, put out the full facts. NAPCO right from the beginning was said to be a temporary program.
You extended it.
So don't make the point that after a while,
I didn't ask you to
give up. It was clear from the beginning that NAPCO was going to be 3 years, and it wasn't going to be a permanent solution.
So let me be
what
serious.
Dr. Bawumia has said,
the reason I said you gave up,
the data available from SNIT is that so far we've done a little over 2 million jobs, about 1.2 in the public services, and about 950,000 in the private sector. And he's rolling out a jobs program across sectors where he says that those programs will help to give a lot more young people permanent jobs. One of them being in the digital arena. I'm privy to work already that is being done that is going to train about 250,000 people for digital jobs in Ghana, across Africa and globally a year. And in 4 years, do about 1 million. He outlined it there in his policy address. The question is, does that make sense? Is it being done elsewhere? Does it work?
So it's going to be private sector led. And I'm saying that the issue of NAPCO, the payment of allowances to them was a problem. They've demonstrated a number of times. Have you realized now as a government that government employment is out of the picture completely, so you are not going to go on that agenda except for maybe institutions like YEA?
Government employment can never be out of the picture completely.
Okay.
Because there will be a public service that will run. Mm-hmm. But there will be a lot more room in the private sector. Mm-hmm. And that is why the new leader of the party is making the point that he's going to support the private sector approach significantly, so that the private sector is able to create and retain a lot more jobs than it has done in times past. If you look at the numbers that we are even talking about, because they are very limited, reliable numbers on jobs in Ghana, SNIT data is what we are relying on. That 1.2 plus 950, 1.2 is public sector, 950 is private sector. And what he's saying is that when he has the opportunity, he's going to invest a lot more in the private sector route, so that the numbers that will be churned out eventually will be heavier on the private sector than on the public sector.
Why don't you then support people working for 24 hours so that more people, 3 times what we already have employed would be employed?
Some of the initiatives that have been rolled out on Dr. Bawumia's watch, when it comes to the specific brief of helping to modernize the Ghanaian economy, they're ensuring that people work for 24 hours. For example, the Ghana.gov platform that has been completed and has north of, I think, 80% of public institutions on it, has people working on it for 24 hours. There are several examples of things that he spoke about during his vision statement that has people working on it for 24 hours.
Let's talk about the leasing of vehicles. Explain that concept to me. What's the plan?
If you come to, let's say, Parliament, take Parliament. Parliament literally every 4 years buys about 275 V8s for members of Parliament.
On loan?
On loan.
You pay for it?
So I, as member of Parliament, I take a loan, which is subsidized by the state, to buy my official vehicle. If you had a different model that says that we don't need to do that, let Parliament just lease a vehicle for you, you won't pay $100,000 in the 4-year period. And it will end up being cheaper on the state than for every 4 years spending $100,000 on a V8 for a member of Parliament, so that he can travel to, for example, Turbodom, where I went yesterday to perform an official function. That is a model. No, it is. It is part of government. No,
because you pay for your vehicle.
No. I'm saying it's a graphic example. It is the same thing. It's a graphic example. So take the ministries, departments, and agencies.
Yes, use that one for
What is the carpool there? Mm-hmm. How many vehicles are we buying? And what percentage of the capital expenditure budget is going towards purchase of vehicles for the ministries, departments, and agencies? And what he's saying is that if you flip the model and you said, lease it. If, for example, the minister is only traveling 2 days in the week to go and perform an assignment in Kpandu, he may only need to lease that vehicle for 2 days in a week to go and perform that function. Then we don't spend taxpayers' money buying this vehicle that is sitting here.
Where he has to go visit, his constituents. He has to go and...
Well, as minister, he's not expected to go visit his constituents. As minister...
If he's a minister, he has to go to other public functions. So what happens? So
he will then use a smaller vehicle leased.
But you already have that plan.
No, so he's saying that this concept of buying vehicles, shelve it. and rather have a smaller system where you lease as and when you require. If you're traveling, you lease a V8. If you are in Accra working, you lease a smaller vehicle.
I thought you already had that plan where you have a carpool where ministers are supposed to use them when they are going out. It's a failure to
even
implement.
for that carpool, you have to buy the car. What he's saying is that the cash outlay is money that can be used for something else.
Okay.
So don't buy that car. Lease it when you need it. These are part of the innovative, bold solutions that he's proposing.
Two more things before we go. National service, not mandatory.
Yes.
The view has been held, and I've spoken to a former executive director of NSS, and he says to me that NSS is a building platform for you. It's a place where you go to build your CVs. One of the reasons you introduced NAPCO, he said to us that when you do NAPCO for 3 years, you go to the employer and say, oh, look, I've worked for 3 years. That's what NSS gives you.
And NSS will stay. He's not said he's going to abolish NSS. He's saying that if you get a job and you are being denied that job because you haven't done the mandatory national service, he's going to take that clause out. If you get a job and the employer is willing to take that job, the employer is not compelled to say that because you haven't done national service, he shouldn't give you that job. The employer should have the liberty to take you for that job. That does not mean that national service has been cancelled. It doesn't mean that this training, opportunity, and learning and growing of culture is gone. It's still there. You can go do it. Employers who want to do it can still do it. But you will not be denied a job because you haven't done national service. That's the wisdom in his policy.
We complain about agri sector not doing well. You don't think that another better alternative would have been take the NSS people, send them to NSS farms, let them produce maize and sorghum.
How many of them have been sent to the farms in recent
so many
years?
We've had NSS farms.
I'm saying, how many of them have been put to the farms? What has been the outcome? What has been the impact on it? And is this policy stopping them?
So
it's not stopping them.
Better. Don't
them.
give an opportunity for
people
to
not stopping them.
out.
It is not stopping them. And he cited a clear example. He said, people get jobs and they are denied the jobs because they've not done mandatory national service. All he's doing is taking the mandatory nature away.
Finally, 50 ministers.
Yeah.
Is that an admission that the Akufo-Addo's size of ministers has been a failure?
It's an admission that in 2025 you will not need the size of government.
It's an admission that it's been a failure.
It is an admission that for the things he wants to do in 2025, you can do it with 50 ministers.
Just 50 ministers.
Yes.
Do you hope to be part of that?
Well, we serve at the pleasure of the president. I don't think that all these efforts are cajoling a president to go one way or the other are helpful. I think that what we should do is to help him to construct a government of 50 ministers that will be efficient.
Which means I will not even ask you if you are going to also be campaigning for running mate, because it seems that vacancy has caused a lot of campaigning.
No, I think that we should give the candidates the room. We should support him, let him make his choices.
Is he frustrated by all these people?
I don't get a sense of frustration from him, but I don't think it's healthy. I think that he should be given room to continue doing things. He's just finished his policy announcement or his vision announcement. He's going to go to the 16 regions of the country, and then we are, as part of that, going to get into the manifesto preparation stage. That picks from his vision board and fleshing it out. So there are a series of activities. Let's go on and not necessarily be distracted.
So the campaigns for running mates, he's not worried at all. He has already decided.
I don't get that impression from him that he's worried about it, but I think that we should give him room to do what he wants to do.
Honorable Kojo Oppong Nkrumah,
yes, sir,
MP of Wasia Erebe,
yes, sir,
Minister in the Akufo-Addo government.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, sir. It's always a pleasure speaking to you.
Are you sure? I'm not
always
sure.
A pleasure speaking to you. I enjoy speaking to you very
Thank you. My name is Umaru Sandamado. This has been Face to Face on CDTV. We'll be back next week on CDTV. Stay with us.